This dollar next move may actually shock you. Hi, it's Charlie giving you the midweek video here this week. And so I've got the dollar index up. We're going to look at a couple of charts here. We're going to look at the dollar index. We're also going to look at the euro dollar, because most people, if they're trading the dollar, then they're normally actually placing a trade. They're trading it on the likes of the euro or the pound or any of the major currencies against the dollar. So let's just zoom out a little bit first of all, so we can get a big picture view here on the monthly chart of the dollar index. Now, as you can see, the dollar index has come down to this lower trend channel line. I talked about this last weekend actually in the video, and we're getting a half decent bounce here. So let's actually go through what's been going on, what may happen in the short term versus the medium term. So overall, what we've actually done, if we just look at, if I get the pen up, the dollar over these recent or last 10 years, let's say, so it made it a low against the euro back in 2008. And ever since 2008, between 2008 and 2022, it's generally been going higher. Now, what was interesting is this move here, we broke through these range highs from 2017 and 2020, is that? 2020. So we broke that, fair enough. Did a nice pullback, fair enough. And one would normally expect a turn back to the upside after a pullback into the prior price levels. It attempted to do that after a fair bit of chop. So let's just zoom in a little bit now on that price action. So after a fair bit of chop through sort of end of 23 and into 24, there's our chop. So first things first, we came up into the upper channel, pulled back into all this prior price action here, and we did get bounces. Fair, that's all fine. Then we've chopped around and then did our breakout. So we went a bit range bound through 23 into 24. Then the back end of 24, we broke out of that range that we'd created here. That ended up becoming what we call a false break. So I'll put FB on here. So this was a false breakout back in the latter part of last year. So going into November, December time of last year, the dollar pulled up. So one would expect at that point, normally in technical analysis, right, okay, we're off to the races and we're making a new high here. But it didn't. And by the time we got into this year and we reversed, that's now confirmed as a false break as we've taken out the lows of that entire move. So if we come back out, the assumption that I'm making here is that is actually our last lower high coming in. We've made now a lower low after breaking these lows out. Yes, in the shortish term, we're into a trendline support here. I've actually got some moving average support I'll show you in a moment as well, on a different time frame. And so could the dollar bounce further? Absolutely. Could it bounce back up to, let's say, 100 or so? Yes, absolutely. However, from a price action perspective, there's our false break here. This should be what we call a dead cat bounce, whatever bounce we get here, and then I'll be looking for this false break move to continue back down to the lower side of this entire price action. So where is that? That's way back down here at around about 89 to 90 zone. Now 89 to 90 zone is about 800 pips lower than where we currently are. Let's just go and have a look at some other time frames. So taking us out to the quarterly chart now, we can see everything I've just shown, but with a little bit more going out a bit further. So this is that 89 to 90 zone. And yes, we've got a trend line support here. We've also, as I've said, with some moving average support here, that's a 50 and a 200. So absolutely, we would always should always expect some sort of bounce off of those. But the point is, since making the highs in 2022 here for the dollar, we have failed to continue that move. We've pulled back, we've bounced, we've done a false breakout, having confirmed breaking to new lows down here. So price ultimately should carry on coming down and searching out the next main price levels. The next main price levels are around, we'll call it 90, around 90 down there. So although there's a lot of people out there calling for the dollar index to resume massively to the upside, that is not my contention here. By looking at the price action, that yes, we can have bounces as we're bouncing as I speak, really, just in recent days on the back of this trade deal. If we go back to the daily chart, you see we had a massive big up day there for the dollar index, and I don't suppose that it's completely done. You never know. We've got a lot of news out this week: FOMC, non-farm payrolls, trade deals, August 1st trade tariff deadlines. So there's a lot going on this week, and anything could happen. Who knows where we'll be at the end of this week? But all I can do is, when I do these videos, is come out to the bigger time frames, because that makes more sense, because by the time videos go out and all that stuff. I'm recording this on Tuesday. This video won't go out until Wednesday. So yes, we're bouncing. The dollar index is having a decent bounce here, but it needed a bounce. It's not. We should expect a bounce. We've just done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months down, and so you have to expect bounces to come in. The contention is this was a failure here. That wasn't a failure. That was just a marked high. The failure was over here to come back up and retest the highs. Then we've retested and broken the lows. So ultimately we should break trend line, create a bounce, but ultimately break lower. If we go and now have a look at the euro dollar, which is the largest currency pair outside of obviously we're looking at the dollar index there, what can we derive from the euro? So again, if I zoom out a fair bit now on the euro, actually that's too far out, isn't it? There we go. I'll tell you what, let's go to the quarterly chart first of all. So for the euro, a similar sort of price action took place. In fact, on the euro, we had a false break in 2022 at the lows of 22, much like we just had with the dollar index. It made that high and then it's completely reversed. So there was our false break, because we had all these prior lows back here. We broke them and then immediately came back. We've diverged down here on divergence indicators, and then again we had that chop through 23, 24. Looked like it was going to break back to the downside. There was our another false break on the smaller monthly chart, which we'll go to in a minute, before then coming up. So again, for the euro, what should it be testing? The equivalent levels from where we are right now, certainly into these highs here around the mid 120s. The mid 120s for the euro dollar would be around about the same level, equivalent level, as the dollar index going down to 90 ultimately. So if we come in down to the monthly chart here, again for the euro now, you get a sense of what we're talking about. There's our major false break here. So don't get me wrong, I was trading this false break, so to speak, to the downside back in 2022. But it ultimately became a false break when we turned all the way back up. The price broke down here. It couldn't continue the trend and came all the way back up. Range bound, looked like for a short period of time there is that trend, that prior trend after 2 years of chop, going to resume, but no, it failed to break down coming into the beginning of 2025, and then we took out the highs, so confirming another mini false break here on the monthly chart. So the contention is, again, much for the euro, much like for the dollar, that yes, it can bounce much like the dollar is against those technical levels. And if I come back out to the quarterly chart just briefly here for the euro, we're just above the quarterly 50, so it can take a bit of a dip to retest that. But ultimately the euro has got more levels above, still in contention. What will drive the euro? And this is the thing, people get caught up in the news. Oh yeah, but the trade deal, Charlie, is not good for the eurozone. No, it's not. But I've been trading for 28 years, and I've been in these sorts of moves time and time again when news comes out which is counter to the prevailing run, and you do get bounces. But much like back in 2022 here, we had a wonderful hammer candlestick back in the May of 2022 into a technical support level. Everyone at that point is thinking we're going to have a much bigger move. Even I thought we're probably going to have a bit of follow through there, and it amounted to nothing, and then price then rolled over. So, and there's always news accompanying all of that. Ultimately, if there's other news coming out, which I contend will be coming, such as the effects of tariffs on the US economy, then ultimately we will still see the euro go higher against the US dollar there, and the dollar index overall resuming back to the downside. But put it into context, we've had 5 months to the upside. There's usually going to be some sort of news which will come out which will enable a market to have a bit of a pullback, and so I'm seeing these as a pullback, and it's just a case of by how much. So one thing for the euro, if I zoom back out, I talked about those 2008 lows in the dollar index, which is the equivalent of the highs in the euro dollar, and the lows were made in 2022, just like the dollar index in reverse. The euro dollar has still yet to even do a 38% retracement of that entire move. What does 38% retracement come in at? Fun enough, around 120. Lovely round number there. So at the very least, I would want to see the euro get to 120 at some point. Ultimately, yes, I'm looking for more than that, around those mid 120s, because that aligns with that dollar index there, and it's some lovely prior price action here for the euro dollar as well. Markets like to come back and retest old price levels. The euro has failed to break lower. It had its chance back here. Here's our false breakdown, much like the dollar index. Where should it come now? Having broken up, should come back up to retest the old price levels. So this high here from 2021 is around about 123.50 or so, and up here I think it's around about 125 or so, 125.50 or so. So, and that comes in beautifully with this cluster of price lows from back through 2008, 2010, 2012. So ultimately, that's what I'm looking at. A lot of people get caught up in the near-term news, and or just think, well, a given market, or it's run so far, or that's it, we're in for a massive reversal now, the euro's going to roll over. And don't get me wrong, do I think that the euro has the capacity to pull back further? Yeah, it's been a mega run. Looking at the daily chart here, or if I go back to the monthly, you can see it in terms of months. And if I come back to the dollar index itself, likewise down here. So yes, we can expect, it's not a guarantee, but we can certainly expect that we could see some more follow through retracement of this bounce for the dollar index, and therefore downside retracement in the euro. But it's a case of maintaining or being aware of the bigger picture there. What has actually technically gone on? We've had these technical false breaks, and until proven otherwise, which would be for these markets to go way higher, then this is all very much on for an ultimate downside break. Now, if you're trading short term, you're not going to be particularly interested in these big monthly, 3 monthly sort of themes, but nevertheless, it's the analysis which is still useful. You know, looking at things like these false breaks that go on, and what it's just reading the technical analysis here of a chart of price action to give you an overall theme. Markets like to come back to retest prior levels. So once they've broken through a level, then they like to go back and retest, unless it's a failure, of course. We've had our failure up here. We should want to come down, ultimately down to and test these levels down here. So how long it takes to get down there could be 2 or 3 months, could be 6 months, whatever, but that's what I contend we shall see. So when you're seeing people talking about dollar strength, yes, I can see dollar strength right now, and continued dollar strength potential in the short term, but it's always good to be mindful of the larger anchor charts. That's me done for now. I'll be back at the weekend.